3 tools you've heard me talk about on this channel just quietly started turning into the same tool. Cursor, Claude Code, Codex. If you watched Stop Paying for Claude or the 10 Repos video, you already know these 3 by name. What you might not know is that over the last few months, the lines between them have started to blur in a way that nobody officially announced and almost nobody outside the terminal is talking about. This is the sequel. Same channel, same no fake claims rule, but this time the story isn't a tool you're missing, it's a trend hiding in plain sight inside changelogs nobody reads. Here's the pattern, before the receipts. For the last 2 years, these 3 tools had genuinely different shapes. Cursor was a full IDE, a fork of VS Code, built around the idea that you watch the AI edit your code line by line, review a diff, accept or reject it. Claude Code was the opposite bet entirely. No editor. A terminal agent that plans, writes, tests, and iterates mostly on its own, with you checking in periodically instead of babysitting every keystroke. Codex, OpenAI's entry, started life mostly inside ChatGPT as a cloud agent you'd hand a task to and walk away from. 3 different philosophies. 3 different answers to the same question. How much control does a human need to keep while the AI does the coding? That's the setup. Here's the insight that makes this worth 10 minutes of your time. Each of these tools has spent the last several months quietly growing the exact feature that used to be its rival's whole identity. Start with Cursor, because this one is the clearest evidence. On January 16, 2026, Cursor shipped a CLI update that added something it never had before, a plan mode you trigger with /plan. That stops and asks clarifying questions before writing a single line of code, and an ask mode that lets you explore a codebase without touching it, explicitly built to feel, in Cursor's own words, quote, just like in the editor, end quote. That's a full-blown terminal-first agent workflow, living inside a tool whose entire reason for existing was that you didn't need a terminal. The same update added cloud handoff. You can prepend an ampersand to a message, push your running session to a cloud agent, walk away, and pick the conversation back up later on web or on your phone. That is functionally the same fire it off, come back later workflow Claude Code and Codex users have been running for over a year. Now flip it around and look at Claude Code, the tool that built its entire brand on not being an IDE. It now ships official IDE extensions for both VS Code and JetBrains, verified and available on JetBrains' own plugin marketplace right now. Open the extension, and you get exactly the thing Claude Code originally asked you to give up. Inline diffs, a visible file tree, a GUI panel sitting next to your code instead of a terminal window you have to context switch into. The terminal-first agent grew an editor. And Codex sits right in the middle of both movements at once. OpenAI's own 2026 documentation describes Codex as shipping in 3 forms simultaneously: a ChatGPT app surface, a standalone CLI, and an IDE extension, all wired to the same underlying agent. So the tool that started as type a task into ChatGPT and wait, now also lives in your terminal and inside your editor, on the same day, using the same brain. 3 tools, 3 different starting philosophies. All 3 now offer a terminal agent mode, an IDE integrated mode, and a cloud handoff mode you can walk away from and resume later. That's not 3 companies copying each other's marketing screenshots. That's 3 completely separate engineering teams, independently deciding the winning shape for an AI coding tool needs all 3 surfaces at once, because developers actually want all 3 depending on the task in front of them. Here's the part that turns this from an interesting coincidence into an actual workflow shift you can use this week. It's not just the surfaces converging, it's the plumbing underneath them. Model Context Protocol, MCP, the open standard Anthropic introduced for letting an agent call external tools and data sources, is now supported across all 3. Cursor's January update specifically added one-click MCP authentication. Codex's own 2026 CLI guide documents MCP setup as a core feature, not an afterthought. Claude Code has supported MCP servers since early in its life. 3 competing agents, 1 shared plumbing layer for plugging in databases, browsers, ticketing systems, whatever you want them to reach. And then there's the file that all 3 now read. AGENTS.md. It's a plain markdown file you drop in your repo root, describing how the agent should behave in that specific project, what commands to run, what not to touch. It started as an informal convention, and by 2026 it's documented as a genuine cross-tool standard, sitting alongside tool-specific files like Claude.md and Cursor's own rules format, but increasingly treated as the shared baseline every agent checks first. OpenAI went further than just supporting a file format. It co-founded something called the Agentic AI Foundation under the Linux Foundation, an actual industry body aimed at building shared, vendor-neutral standards for how agents behave across tools. That is not hype video framing. That's a real organizational move by one of these three companies, explicitly about interoperability between agents from different vendors. So here's what that actually means for how you work, practically, starting today. You don't have to pick a religion anymore. The old advice was, are you a cursor person or a terminal person? Pick a lane. That advice is aging badly. A workflow that actually matches where these tools are heading in 2026 looks like this. Use Cursor's IDE for the moments you want to watch every diff land. Refactors you don't fully trust an agent to run unsupervised. Anything touching production config. Use Claude Code or Codex CLI for the long, boring multi-step jobs. Write the test suite, migrate the auth layer, chase down every usage of a deprecated function across 40 files, and let it run mostly unattended while you do something else. And use the cloud handoff on any of the three for the job you want started before you leave your desk and finished by the time you're back, checked from your phone if you have to. It's worth sitting for a second on how unglamorous the actual January update was, because that's part of why almost nobody outside the terminal noticed it. It wasn't a keynote, it was a changelog entry. Alongside the plan and ask modes, Cursor quietly shipped better keyboard handling across iTerm2, Ghosty, Kitty, Warp, and Z. A /setup terminal command that auto-configures your key bindings, word-level inline diffs so you can see exactly which characters changed instead of whole lines, session hooks you can wire into your own scripts, and a /usage command to track what you're actually spending. None of that reads like a headline. All of it reads like a team quietly rebuilding a terminal-first agent feature by feature, the same way Claude Code rebuilt an IDE feature by feature with its VS Code and JetBrains extensions. That's usually how the real shifts happen in this space. Not a launch event, a changelog you almost skipped. Now before this turns into another everything is converging by the hype video, the honest counterpoint, because it matters, and because pretending it doesn't, would be exactly the kind of overstatement this channel refuses to do. Shared surfaces are not the same thing as shared substance. One writer covering this space in 2026 put it plainly. These tools, quote, have genuinely different shapes, end quote, even now, and argued the more interesting trend underneath the shared feature list is actually divergence, not convergence, once you look at what each tool optimizes for by default. That's a fair read, and here's why. Cursor is still fundamentally vendor-flexible around models, but opinionated around review, built for people who want to watch. Claude Code is still built around autonomous multi-step execution as the default, not the exception. Codex is still bound tightly to OpenAI's own models and its own sandboxed cloud execution environment, which is a real constraint if you want to bring your own model. Same new features on the label does not mean same tool underneath. Convergence here means gained the same optional surfaces, not became interchangeable. Pick the one whose default behavior matches how you actually like to work, then use the other two for the specific moments they're each still better at. One more thing worth being straight about, because this channel doesn't do vendor-run numbers without saying so. Every benchmark you'll see comparing these three tools' coding performance is either a raw model score on a neutral shared harness or a score from that same model running inside one specific tool's own custom harness. And those two numbers can differ by several points depending on how the tool wraps and prompts the underlying model. If a video, a tweet, or a comparison chart tells you tool X beats tool Y on some benchmark, ask which harness produced that number before you believe it. That single caveat will save you from more bad tool decisions than any feature comparison ever will. Here's the actual takeaway to walk away with. This isn't a story about which of these three tools wins. It's a story about the fact that the question, which one should I use, is starting to be the wrong question. The real 2026 workflow is running two or three of these side by side, matched to the task, connected through the same MCP servers, reading the same AGENTS.md file in your repo, so switching between them costs you almost nothing. If you're still treating this as a one-tool forever decision, you're solving a problem these companies have already started solving for you. If this is the kind of trend you want caught before it's obvious, that's basically the entire job of this channel. Subscribe, and I'll keep tracking exactly where these tools are heading next. Links to everything I referenced sitting in the description below.